baby's got a transistor radio. She takes it everywhere we go.
Trying to tear these modules out. Run into a slight problem. One, these pins, man, they are really challenging to pull. They're nice thick wires, and because of such, they're really proven to be very challenging to pull out. Tried using my desoldering needles, and they work out okay, but these wires, like I said, are very challenging. There's a lot of them. This does push through, as you can see here on a couple of them. It did push through, and we've got this solder splatter on them. So I went through afterwards and I used desoldering braid and cleaned up the excess solder and tried to pluck them out. A little challenging there as well. So I grabbed my desoldering gun and I ran into a problem with it. Here on the diaphragm, it's not sucking too well. So I went to the great eBay in the sky to buy another diaphragm. Unfortunately, I could not find another one available for purchase anywhere. So I will re-glue that, but I don't know how well it's going to suck, because that's going to suck if I can't find another one. I'm sure in time I will. Or I should say, that's not the diaphragm. That's the diaphragm. That's the filter for the diaphragm. Apologize for that. So I sat here and I was thoughting that I could come in with some snips, cut the wires, and free the board that way, replace these two caps on this board. This is the AF board. And then I've just got one cap right here, and this is the IF board. And then I've got these three caps right here that need to be replaced. But what I've decided to do instead of pulling these out to replace just a couple capacitors, and I'll explain why real quick. Well, how about right now? One, on the IF board, in order to pull this properly, on the back side, I have the tuning knob and string. Well, I'm sitting here thinking, you know, that's really going to be a pain in the back side. And full disclosure, I've never changed one. I don't think it'd be too terribly hard. I do have the service manual. The service manual does say how to do it. And I thought that I could always tape the string down, you know, undo the nut here, tape the string down onto the knob, and hope that it wouldn't slide off. And that's probably what I would do. But I think I'm going to not do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these three caps, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep flipping the board and making you seasick there. I'm going to replace these three caps and test them out on my Syncor LC75 capacitor meter. Visually, they look fine. And I think if they come back testing fine, then I'll put them back in and I'll just go ahead and clean up the board, get the debris off of there, dirt. On this side right here, you can see deep down there underneath the red wire, we've got cobwebs. I'll go ahead and clean that up, clean that out. Go ahead and clean the back side up with some isopropyl alcohol. Luberize these controls, knobs, and switches. And then we'll go ahead and tune up the radio for peak performance. If the radio works out fantastic, then I'll go ahead and reassemble it, call it a done deal. If it doesn't work out, then we'll go ahead and tear these two modules off. Let me tear these off, and we'll come back. Well, hello, and welcome back to This Old Radio. I'm your host, Norm. Before we get started, let's talk about shop safety. Don't jab yourself in the eyes. That could hurt. All right. Hey, look. It's been about 4 days, 5 days since the last clip. Of course, you wouldn't know that unless I didn't tell you that. Things happening. Stuff to do. Cheeseburgers to eat. I wish. Hey, look. So what I've done in since the last clip. Let me phrase it like that. As you see, I've pulled the boards, and wish I had a pointer other than my finger. There. Pulled the boards by just snipping on this board these two wires here, and then on this one I went ahead and desoldered all that, which, by the way, is a pain in the backside. My goodness gracious. I think if I had to do it all over again, I would snip all these wires and come back in and put fresh new wires in. So, note to yourself, if you have one of these radios and this is what you need to do, snip them. So much easier. On this board, I've replaced all the capacitors, and I've replaced 2 resistors. And then I've replaced the 3 caps that are on the main board here. This board here is the, gosh, what was it, Jack? What was it? Oh, it was the amplifier board, the AF board. And on this board right here is the IF board. Now, I did replace the 1 capacitor here, and all I could say is I'm very glad I went ahead and made that executive decision to go through all this pain and trouble to do just that. The capacitors, the electrolytics, out of whack. I mean, let's see if we could look at that. Guts are falling out on that one. Some of them, even though they might have shown near their printed jacket value, the ESR was crazy, or vice versa. So, at the beginning of the video, I was contemplating, gosh, you know, they look too pretty. Do they really need to be removed? And the answer to that is yes. Yes, they do. I know there's a lot of purists that don't believe in getting in there and removing all the capacitors out of something that have the appearance of working, but you know, I don't mind doing it if A, it's not too freaking challenging, or B, there's not, you know, 8 million electrolytic capacitors in there. So on this one, glad I did it. The one on the IF board was definitely doubled its printed value. And the ASR, I forget what it was, something like 20 ohms, 30 ohms, something crazy, crazy mad whack. So I'm hoping that this radio for you, Don, will work fantastic like my GE radio does. Removing the IF board did not have its own challenges. I removed the, I left the string intact, and I didn't really want to restring a radio that was already working good. Even though I could have, as stated, I've never restrung a radio. So I figured why subject myself to, you know, cruelty if I didn't have to. So I opted to leave it in, and that's why I went ahead and cut the wires on the board here. On both boards, I went ahead and reflowed all the solder points. Figure out I'm in here, I might as well just hit them for GP. No need to, find out later there could have been there was an issue and I could have fixed it while I was there. And I went ahead and cleaned both bottom sides of the boards and the main board here with isopropyl alcohol and Chemtex. And as I stated, this did not come off without a hitch. One of the soldering pads right here came off, and it don't look like the camera's in focus on that. The solder pad right here came off. However, that's really not an issue. This one here is just a mechanical connection, where this one right here is an electrical connection. And we could see that by the trace. As you see, this one has a trace, and this one here does not. So I'm not too concerned about that. What I'm planning on doing is taking some solid wire, as this was solid wire, and making a mechanical connection here by looping it through the hole and then around itself, and then hitting it with a spot of solder to make a good solid mechanical connection. And then I'll run it down to the board. I'll remove this knob, very easy, by this screw here. And if you look right here, let me try to... This solder point right here is where that wire goes. So I could definitely make a good solder connection. For this one, its solder point is up underneath here. Now this is going to be the cool, tricky part. Because right there is its hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the wire, I'm going to heat this hole up from the top side. That should allow me, and it looks like I may have a tiny hole right there. That's going to allow me to stick the wire through and solder from the top side and make a good bonded electrical connection. At least that's what the hope, that's what the theory is. This is actually how I removed it, was I heated up the wire from the top side, and the solder liquefied, and I was able to pull it right on through. I have the other module completely welded down, and this one here I'm in the process of mashing it down and getting it in soldered in place, or welded in place, whatever. But I thought I'd take this opportunity to bring you in and show you exactly what I'm doing. You can see this wire right here. I made my mechanical connection, and I went ahead and soldered that together. Haven't got it soldered over here yet, and this one here will be last to be soldered down. I'm in the process right now of getting the size on this one here just right and getting it into the hole. I know you can't see it in your angle, but you'll have to believe me, or maybe you won't. But I just wanted to take this opportunity, since I'm at this point, to show you the who's and the what's and get a better idea of what's happening. I'm going to go ahead and finish this step out off camera. I would do it, but on camera, but as you can see, my hands would be in the way, and the overhead camera at this point just is not catching the shot, due to the fact that my magnifier glass that I'm using is too short. I really need to get the long one. Once I do that, then I can shift my project center screen, and I need to take the overhead camera and bump it out further. So trying to work out the bugs here, and we'll get it eventually. So in the interim, camera A is going to have to do. And I think for this shot, it did just fine. As I was cleaning up the board, I thought, hey, it'd probably be best if I cleaned any knob switches and buttons and all that good stuff. That way, if I had any oils or chemicals as such, I could clean that all up in one one swoop as opposed to coming back and cleaning up my mess later after already cleaning up my mess or manufacturer's mess. So I went to hose down the volume control, and unfortunately this is a sealed unit. There is no holes. So I went ahead and pulled it. As you can see, it's a little gross, a little dirty. But then again, I guess if you were 50 years old, never been cleaned, you too would be a little gross, a little dirty. So I'm going to tear this apart by removing those 3 tabs. Oops, get you in frame. We got one here, one there, and one right there. Pull those up. It'll flop out. I get in there and clean it up and relube it and all that good stuff and put it back together. Not sure if I'll do that on camera or not. We'll see. Trying to keep the video short and try not to do too much on camera. Alright, catch you in the next clip.